What is up, Mets fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Mets'd podcast. The boys are back in New Jersey, and we don't have that much to talk about with the Mets. It's been a couple days, but we have some big things. We haven't talked to you about Sean Manaea, obviously being hurt, so we'll give our opinions and thoughts on what's going on there. Little Baty magic going on. Mr. March is totally back, so we got to talk about him. We also have a media marvel at the end of the episode. Anything else I'm forgetting here, James?
No, those are definitely the big things. Couple other teeny tiny small things that we'll get through, but like the big keys this episode. Don't tell the people there's not much to talk about. We have plenty to talk about. Spring training's rolling right now. Manaea, Baty are the two big ones right now because those are the only real things. But before we do get started, just want to let you guys know that Foul Territory will be at Mets camp this coming Friday. Hopefully you guys listen to this on Thursday. So anyone who's down in Port St. Lucie, go say hi to the guys. And especially, this is my plea to you guys, just throw like a little bit of popcorn at Eric Kratz. Just let him know that he's not welcome in the Mets community.
Yeah, he's catching some heat right now for his takes of saying the Mets are third place team in the National League East. We'll wait and see. Let the play on the field prove Eric Kratz wrong. As always, guys, if you're enjoying what you're watching or listening to over here, make sure you are subscribed to the Mets'd Podcast YouTube channel. We are about 1,000 subs away from 10,000. We want to hit that by opening day. So please, if you have not yet, click that sub button. It really does help us out. And if you're listening to us, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, drop us a rating, drop us a review, download, and subscribe. We'll be reading out reviews at the end of this too, because we said on the last episode that we would. So we will make sure that we talk about that at the end. But let's start it off with talking about Sean Manaea. Again, injury, right oblique strain right now. To me, initially, it didn't sound as bad as it could have been. Whenever it's not the throwing arm, I feel a lot better than when it is. But it is still concerning because he's going to miss the start of the season. I think he's going to be back in April. They think it's going to be a pretty short-term IL stint for him. But this is the concern that we've had with the Mets rotation always, even it was last year, was eventually someone's going to get hurt, and that's when you start to see some cracks in what is considered to be already a not strong rotation by most.
Yeah, and just like, I know while they're saying the injury's not that serious, expect to see it back in April, anytime you have any player with a muscle injury in February, that should be cause for concern. Like, there's plenty of time, like until we get to 2 or 3 weeks from opening day, which we're not actually that far from right now. But until we get there, yeah, like no cause for concern, but just the sheer fact that this is our second pitcher with a muscle injury is bad. Like, I don't know how else to phrase this. Bad, especially bad because these are basically the only two guys in this Mets rotation you think you probably could have counted on for significant bulk over the course of the season, and like you had a pretty good, a secure feeling about their talent level. And the big thing about this, we'll talk about Manaea in a second, this puts so much pressure now on Kodai Senga. 1, to stay healthy, and 2, to be like a true alpha in this rotation. And then after that, it puts a lot more pressure on David Pearson now really step up. Basically, we have to do what he did for most of last year consistently until these guys come back, because this Mets rotation is, at the same time, I think it's very kind of like a mess, but also not anything to panic. I think it could be like a very beautiful mess. It could wind up being a mess that is able to be navigated through, but it's just so concerning that the guys that we could rely on for the bulk, the guys who are going to be the foundation, suddenly are not there right at the beginning, which is bad.
Yeah, I'm hoping the oblique thing is just him being a little bit tight because he hasn't played baseball in a minute. I mean, oblique is what, down on like your side, right? Is your oblique?
Yeah, it's like we used to twist.
So right oblique for him, that's going to be his front leg when he's pitching. What do you think that could possibly have been caused by?
I mean, it's not really front leg. It's more about like, I'm pretty sure like the side of your abs.
No, but I mean like in terms of like when he's pitching, when he's from a left-handed thing, like his right oblique is going to be the one facing the batter. That's all I mean.
Yeah, it's the part when you twist. Like, I don't think it's anything specific yet. It's probably just tightness first time in camp. But whenever, I always got concerned this offseason. I think I talked about it, you guys. I've seen other smart pitching people talk about it. It's just when a pitcher changes an arm slot like that, I'm not saying it gives you more of a less chance for injury, but definitely just changes the way that your body and your muscles interact with each other when you release the baseball. Like if you release a baseball here, for the YouTube people, every single time you throw a pitch for a decade, and all of a sudden for 2 months you start releasing it here like Sean Manaea did. You're in shape, you're loose from the whole season, like you're strong from the season, like things can work together. But then when you kind of switch that kinetic chain and then you take a couple months off and you come back and start doing the new thing again, I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not an athletic trainer. But
we got to get our boy on here to talk about this stuff with us.
Yeah, right? But it does feel like you're probably just changing the way some of these things in your body interact with each other. And it feels like you're probably slightly increasing the chance for random, stupid, weird injuries like this one to Sean Manaea. And like the way he talked about it is that, like he said, he mentioned the injury plateauing. Like it never got better and never got worse. He just kind of had this nagging thing that was happening to him. So it's just like, just shut it down and let it reset, which also makes me scared. Like this was something you were dealing with. This is something that was happening for a little while. Like anytime that there's like shutdowns in February for muscles, I get afraid. And Same thing I was with Kodai last year when I was like, guys, do not be
Easy.
optimistic about it. I'm just saying, like, I'm not. If I had to guess an over under for Sean Manaea's first pitch of the season, I think the line is set at May 15th.
Wow. Okay. I was going to say May 1st, May 15th. All right. Well, hopefully, you know what? Hopefully, in typical fashion, the Shiano jinx is just so good and so strong.
I hope so. But then what this does now is this just puts, again, so much more pressure on the end of this rotation. Like, just talked about Peterson, Senga. Like, they have to be true guys. Clay Holmes has to, and I think we are doing this, expedite his move to starting rotation, be good at it. But now it's Blackburn, Canning, McGill. Like, the Montes injury put those guys in the spotlight. So, okay, now these guys are in the rotation. Now with the Manaea injury, now these guys are central parts of the rotation early in the season. And that definitely is gonna send a shiver down the spine of many Mets fans.
Well, we saw Paul Blackburn pitch yesterday against the Marlins. It was a very bizarre, I mean, I shouldn't say very bizarre. It was a 1-inning start. I think he only threw 7 pitches in total. And
Just 7, yeah.
He didn't throw any fastballs, according to Baseball Savant. Is that a misread? Because 89-mile-an-hour changeup feels fast for Paul Blackburn.
Yeah, looking at some of the pitch readings, looked like there were probably some changeups and some fastballs. There was a cutter. But he has talked about reshaping his entire repertoire this offseason. So especially this first outing after the spinal fluid leak, where it seems like he's still going to work up very, very, very slowly, there's probably more experimentation than actually what you're then look like. I mean, you're looking for specific things in the mound, trying to execute certain pitches. I think that's probably what this like very short outing was, rather than like actually trying to look deeply into this. But when he starts to throw more pitches, like Baseball Savant only says he threw multiple changeups, which again, I think only probably 2 or 3 of them are changeups. The other ones were fastballs. I'm definitely curious to see how all these pitches look when he throws many of them in one start together versus literally just smattering them separately.
Yeah, we also saw a little bit of Genesis Cabrera, not Genesis, Genesis Cabrera. He's fighting for one of those last spots on the team. Kevin Herget is a guy who, on the 40-man roster, we've been talking about some possible changes that could be made to the Mets 40-man roster. Feels like Kevin Herget could be a guy fighting to stay on there. Saw a little bit of Anthony Ghost, too, which has not looked that bad in spring. He's definitely got a live arm for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lefty who's a hoss who could just get gas up the upper 90s.
Did you see the other day, there was an infield pop-up when he was on the mound? And normally pitchers, you run away from the baseball, get the hell away from it. Anthony Ghost runs to foul territory, camps under it for like 10 seconds as other guys are chasing. He's like, get away, get away. It's like, oh yeah, this guy was a top prospect outfielder at one point in his career. Let him catch all the fly balls he wants as a pitcher.
There's also a big thing of spring training because for most of the players that we care about and are the household names, they could give half a shit about spring training.
Yeah.
Like they play the first inning, then you watch them walk home through the outfield while the rest of the team plays. But for guys like Anthony Ghost and Genesis Cabrera and like the guy who's going viral right now, the Rockies reliever Hefrion,
love him.
Like these guys are putting everything into these spring training appearances because this is the difference in making or missing the team for some of these guys, especially some of these guys without options, where it's either making the team or being DFA'd. The pressure on every single outing, it's pretty ridiculous. So I think that's kind of a fun little underrated thing about this time of spring training is the guys at the bottom of rosters going just hard every single pitch.
Yeah, a couple other things to note from this game just because we couldn't actually watch it. So this is a lot of box score watching here. Alex Ramirez hit another ball hard. I think he's hit a ball hard in every single game so far that he's played in spring, which is kind of interesting as a guy who got cut basically this year off the 40-man. Nobody picked him up, so he's trying to stick around. And Jeff McNeil, another ball, 106.8 miles an hour, double today. Love to see it. I'm going to keep banging the Jeff McNeil drum that I think he's really going to bounce back really well this year. The swing looks so good in the one spring training game that we could actually physically see him swinging.
I'm fully with you too. It's just my whole thing is we saw it last year. We know he was dealing with injuries, so I feel like that's just like A, B, C. Bang! I'm very just confident. We also missed going over the spring training game for Monday. Not that we missed it, but there's another spring training game happen. We saw Blade Tidwell get into a game with 30 total pitches, gassed up to 99. I wonder about. It's kind of funny for a guy like Blade Tidwell, who's so big and has been like kind of a hoss, like given length his entire career, going back to his days at Tennessee. So it's probably very fun for him in a 30 pitch outing to be like, I'm going to gas this up and see what I could get. But at least seeing 99 for the 30 pitches makes me think that hopefully there's a guy that could still touch 97 and sit at least 95 when he gets, 50, 60, 70, 80 pitches. And he's someone now, again, like all these guys at bottom rotation, spots are now available. If you pitch well, if you put yourself into a position to do this, like you can do it. I know that Canning and Blackburn are going to be on this team because they don't have options. And Tyler McGill, I think, is just much better than the rest of these guys who are potential options. I think he will be there too. But guys get injured, one more guy goes down, something else goes wrong. Like Tidwell and Sproat especially are absolutely in the driver's seat to be able to try and do this and take a role like this by the horns. I'm very, very, very curious to see how those two respond to this call in spring training. Because Tidwell getting up to 30 pitches, I think it was still under 2 innings, so he got hit around a little bit. No, it was 2 innings. You got hit around. But we saw some decent pitches, some good shapes, and some good mix by him. So that's kind of like the other funny push and pull we were talking about like last episode of spring training, where results don't matter so much in spring training, but seeing what pitches are doing, how they're interacting, that's the most important thing. Even when a guy like Tidwell gets hit quite hard and also kind of can't find the strike zone sometimes.
Did you see your boy Simone Juan?
No, what did he do in that one?
106.3 line out from Simone Juan. Guy just hits the baseball hard every at bat, it seems like.
I see it right here in the box score. Now, Jose Azocar hit the ball really hard. Juan Soto hit too hard again. It's just Pete hit a couple hard the last few days. Pete got a 114, then he hit a nice laced inside out double. That's another thing that's funny about the Mets rotation being so weak. This lineup might be so
really
fucking good.
Yeah.
So damn good that I'm just like, all right, I don't know. Let's win 6-5.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how the Brewers operated in the past when they had these chaos rotations. I know I keep bringing it back there, but I mean, we have the guy who was the architect of those Brewers teams. So it makes a lot of sense. You can see a lot of similarities. Last things I'm going to mention from that game too, Douglas Orellana. I believe we mentioned him in a prospect report last year. Actually got to see him pitch a little bit. Dude throws like 96, 97 miles an hour. Some interesting stuff. A name to keep an eye out for in the minors and the Mets pitching.
Yeah, he's a favorite of some of the Mets pitching people. MJD Analysis, Mikey's talked about him a lot on Twitter, just being someone with a ridiculously low arm slot for his fastball. And fastball, it just moves well. And it's just amazing that the Mets have so many interesting pitching prospects now. We don't even know all of them. That's such a far cry from when Jose Buda was the only guy within like 4 minor league rosters. Like that guy, I think, could pitch in the major leagues at some point in the next few years. So I think, again, this Mets pitching is going to be weird. It's going to be uncomfortable at times, but between Canning, McGill, Blackburn, you might see Justin Hageman. Like, there's going to be so much bullshit, and you're going to wind up
Waddell.
Yeah, you're going to be like, oh, wow, the starters had the 16th lowest ERA in baseball this year. Can't believe it.
You think the Mets go after Quintana now? You think they try to bring him back or no?
I really had the gut feeling yesterday, Tuesday, and I posted it in the Mets community, and people were like, Shiano sources? I was like, no, I literally just woke up and I felt like they might. Because it just seemed like that's where this stuff was heading. So I was like, you know what, maybe $4 million. Maybe the Mets just DFA Griffin Canning, just keep Frankie Montas off 60 IL and just make it happen, get Quintana for the bulk. But I don't think it is. And I think that's a major vote of confidence in a guy like Griffin Canning and in a guy like Tyler McGill. Especially like, I'm starting to get really deep into fantasy baseball stuff now. And the difference between how Tyler McGill is being viewed in fantasy baseball circles, deep, intense fantasy baseball circles, high rollers, big-time players, between how Mets fans view Tyler McGill is shocking and hilarious at the same time.
It's kind of the Schmetch-Matey thing. It's a little bit of that
same
too.
Shit, yeah. It's like he's a popular sleeper pick. People see the safety in his rotation spot. People like the stuff. I heard Sarah say he thinks Tyler McGill has one of the deepest repertoires of all of these pitchers that are being drafted like outside of like the top like periphery of fantasy guys. Like the fact that he has 6 usable pitches at this point in his career is just so funny. Listening to people who don't watch Tyler McGill every single start he's ever made in his career, like talk about what he has and what he does. And there was another good a good blurb by Eric Smolsky, my colleague at Roto World, about Griffin Canning, about how he increased his sweeper usage hard at the end of last year when he pitched a little bit better. And he said the Mets are just definitely going to take his 4-seamer and make it a sinker too. He's going to be sinker, sweeper, cutter guy. It's gonna feel ugly. You guys might feel gross, but like while the Manaea injury sucks, and it does super, super duper suck, I keep finding myself just not being panicked about this Mets rotation.
No, I'm not panicked yet. I'm not panicked yet.
Could become panicked at some point.
Yeah, could become panicked at some point. Not there yet.
Panic.
I think I'm still a little too like drunk from the idea that just baseball's back, honestly, to even get like upset and panic yet.
Yeah, March 16th is the first day I will allow us to panic. So I think that's right when we get to under 2 weeks to opening day. That panic could be possible then, but right now, let's just see how these guys get through the spring. Let's see what we can do with like disgusting middle of our rotation.
Yeah, last guy to talk about here, Brett Baty, of course, Mr. March, as he's been so eloquently named, just continues to take really good swings and hits the ball really hard. And I know we talked about it last episode where people definitely write off Brett Baty way too soon. And I understand why based on what they've seen. But there was that sneaky stat that you mentioned where he's had about 700 less plate appearances in his minor league career, and I think 500 in total at AAA than a guy like Mark Vientos. That could be a huge, huge reason why Brett Baty did not look ready like Mark Vientos did last year. I mean, obviously, there still needs to be a lot of changes to Brett Baty's game. We've seen some of them happen so far, very, very short time in spring, like pulling the baseball in the air, which was a huge concern of yours. But I'm starting to get really excited about Brett Baty again. I can't help it. He's Tyler McGill of hitters.
I mean, he's also probably should be better than Tyler McGill of hitters because he was a first-round pick with tons of pedigree. But it's like Brett Baty was such a weird prospect originally. I think it's been kind of a long time, so we forget about that, especially because He was drafted before the pandemic, where he was a 19-year-old high schooler with like major physical tools. So people like in like the optimists in the brain are like, oh, he's already 19. We could really get into the majors quickly. But the opposite of that should be like, oh, no. He's still a high schooler. Like he's still a high schooler that played against high schoolers. So it's hard. And then before he had a full year of minor league baseball, he got zapped by the pandemic. And then after he played really well in the lower minors, he was rushed to the majors and had to yo-yo back up and down. I mean, I'm not trying to give him like every excuse in the book because he still had a lot of chances and he hasn't hit well yet, but 173 fewer games in the minor leagues than Mark Vientos. 173 for two players that were drafted out of high school. That's a massive difference. That's like basically 2 full minor league seasons.
Yeah.
And then you especially look at some of the other players in the 2019 draft that were taken out of high school who've already reached the major leagues. Bobby Wood Jr., freak of nature. Can't compare him. CJ Abrams, freak of nature. Not comparing it to him. A guy like Riley Green, not that many. Brett Baty hasn't played that many more minor league games than Riley Green. About 1 extra minor league season compared to Riley Green. And Riley Green also struggled he didn't struggle the same way as Brett Baty, but it was not the easiest transition for him to the major leagues. And that was the last high school player taken ahead of Brett Baty in that draft. And then you have guys in the high schools after him, like Corbin Carroll again, freak of nature. It's very different. But
and he developed power seemingly out of nowhere. He could not hit like that when he first got drafted.
No, he looked like just like a speed guy, like a South Freeland. And all of a sudden, like, oh my God, who is this? Even a guy like Volpe, who came to the major leagues quickly based on defense, but also still got almost 200 minor league games under his belt. And still kind of can't hit.
I was about to say, if Anthony Volpe played third base for the New York Mets, I don't think people would be saying the same things that they are with him playing shortstop for the Yankees. He can't hit for shit the 2 years that he's played.
No, and right there, we just went through all of the first-round picks that were hitters out of high school in the draft, into 2019 draft. Besides, there was one more here. It was Keone Cavaco.
Oh, I think he's trying to become a pitcher now, Keone Cavaco.
Really? Yeah, Chula
Twins
Vista boy.
Prospect, right?
Yeah, Twins, exactly. Nailed it.
Yeah.
But again, like that, it's hard. You got to play a lot of baseball. A lot of those high schoolers wind up being freaks. Brett Baty didn't wind up being a freak. He still wind up being a really, really good baseball player. That's not something we sneeze at. And then when you look at the way this Mets roster is coming together right now with the magical injury, there is an open spot for an infielder on this bench. I know that Tacoma and all the Mets beat writers are really pounding the drum for, I think, what's his name? Donovan Walton?
Donovan Walton, yeah, which is an interesting pounding of the drum for all people.
Apparently, he's kind of this spring training is like Zach Short, Joey Wendell, where they're like, he does everything right and he can play shortstop.
That's the worst. Dude, I think we honestly need to stop the hate and he can play shortstop thing, because I think at the end of the day, and I think I mentioned this last episode.
You did.
Francisco Lindor is penciled in at shortstop every single day. He's not coming out of a game early. If he is, the Mets are up by 15 runs or they're down by 15 runs. So put whoever the fuck they want to play at shortstop. I don't care when it's that big of a difference. I think there's literally no reason to have to force a backup shortstop on this roster. I would much rather have a guy like Brett Baty who could play second and third and maybe even corner outfield if we desperately need it.
And I am down for the concept of backup shortstop on the roster, because Francisco Lindor was mic'd up for one of the games last weekend. And I think Ron Carey, someone was like, how much was your back really bothering you at the end of last season? He was like, a lot. So there might be some impotence by the Mets this year to give him a couple more days off. But if you're giving him days off, it can't be for Donovan Walton.
Yeah.
No, like if you're going to have a true backup shortstop, it has to be someone who's a little bit more option, give a better option, give a little bit more oomph in the middle of the lineup. Someone that can actually... Yeah, that hopefully. But again, I still think that they seem like they're really, really complacent. Let Acuna start the season in the minor leagues, which I also, again, think is probably the right idea, considering all these things we're talking about Brett Baty right now. So I think that's all super fair. But just, I wonder if that last roster spot, if Baty is the guy that could differentiate himself there. Whoa. If he just tears the cover off the ball this spring and he becomes the primary lefty on the bench to start the year, like there's probably a world where something can open up for him like that.
No, definitely. And I mean, listen, if he continues to hit this well, maybe everybody's favorite radio host, Brandon Tierney, could make his wish could come true and talk about how the Mets should be trading Brett Baty for Marcus Stroman, which was, I mean, one of the top 5 dumbest takes I think I've heard in the last calendar year. That's stupid.
Yeah, this is not going to be our first official sanctioned media marvel of the year, because we're waiting for the in-season to do that. But this is definitely our first spring training media marvel. And just again, for the people who didn't see it, Brandon Tierney thinks it's a great idea for the Mets to trade Brett Baty for Marcus Stroman.
And listen, I think it's a great idea for the Yankees. I think they make that trade 100 out of 100 times. You get rid of Marcus Stroman's contract and you get a free young player. You make that move every single day of the week. The only trade that would ever happen where the Mets would bring back Marcus Stroman, which I think is a 0% chance of happening, would be as if they somehow can swap Starling Marte, I think, for Stroman because of a catastrophic pinching injury and needing to get innings right now.
Yeah, and again, this is also the time in the sports calendar. There's nothing to talk about at all.
No,
So you
I
if
mean,
you're a radio host, I tip the cap. You have to make up fake trades that make no sense. That would not benefit half the teams in the trade. So shout out to Brand Tierney. He's best in business at that. One more thing I do want to talk about that I forgot to mention
ooh, okay.
as we start to wrap up here quickly. This is one of the shortest episodes we're ever going to do ever. It's the fact that Starling Marte is still just not appeared in anything. At what point do we think this is like a soft exile?
I don't. You want to know why? Because Mendoza has been very open publicly about how he wants Starling Marte on this team. I know he's not going to say I don't want him. That would be an insane thing to say. But he's been very open publicly about wanting Starling Marte and his value here. And all the videos that we've seen, the players at least loves having Starling Marte around. Like Juan Soto's rubbing his head and putting suntan lotion on him. Him and Jose Siri are buddies, which is so funny because all we heard about was Juan Soto and Jose Siri had problem with each other. And it seems like these guys might be best friends. I don't know if you've seen the videos, but can't stay away from each other. So could it be an exile? Maybe. Could it be Starling Marte being like, I don't know, guys, if I'm just hitting, do I really need to even like play in February? Like we know how bad my muscles are. Like let's take it easy. I think it might be more of that. Have we seen Nimmo play as well, by the way?
No, but he does this, I feel like, every spring training.
But that's what I'm kind of saying too, is like two guys with bad muscles just don't play.
Also, didn't Starling Marte and Alex Ramirez do the picture where they were literally crossing swords with their bats?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. That's good. Yeah, the guys do love. But just the way that Tim Healy worded this tweet, and I'll read it for you guys right now.
Sure.
No word on when Starling Marte, right knee, will get into Grapefruit League games. Carlos Mendoza said he has some good days, some not so good days in his running progression. The Mets remain confident. This is the part that killed me. The Mets remain confident he can physically be a major leaguer still.
The Mets remain confident that maybe he starts the year on the IL. That's
Mets remain confident he could be a major leaguer still. I think that ties. Well, this ties into the other thing we forgot to talk about, which was the fact the Mets made kind of a sneaky like DFA waiver wire move earlier this week for Alexander Canario. Alexander Canario came over to the Cubs originally. I want to say it was the Chris Bryant trade from 2021.
I think you might be right. That feels like that could, or not 20. Ooh, I don't think it is actually. Wait, let's see.
No,
I'm gonna look it up. Oh no, you're right. It was Chris Bryant. Right. So Caleb Killian and Alexander Canario for Chris Bryant.
Two guys who got pretty close to the major leagues. That's funny for 1 year, Chris Bryant. But Canario is a crazy powerful outfielder with tons of swing and miss. Like, that's just the game. He's taking war hacks. He's putting a bat in the ball. If he can, it's going to go a long way. If not, he's going to strike out like he does usually about a third of the time. And I think a lot of people felt weird about this move because they're like, the Mets have 7 outfielders. Canario has no options. But I'm pretty sure when a player gets DFA'd, every team gets a chance to put in an offer. And I believe it goes in order of the way last season ended, correct?
Yeah.
At least I know that happens in season. So if that is true, I'm pretty sure that's true. If he got all the way down to the Mets, that means most of the teams passed on him. So people are like, why would the Mets be the team to go in for him? They have too many outfielders. You're going to give up cash for him and DFA him. If that many teams passed him the first time, there's a good chance that many teams will pass on him the second time if you were to DFA him right when spring training ends. And then if you can sneak him to AAA, that's a huge win. To get a guy like Alexander Canario in AAA, he gets to be down there for this year. But also for a situation like Starling Marte, where there's a non-zero chance he starts the year in the IL, is great insurance. Give this guy Canario a couple of bats beginning of the year, a la Nick Plummer from a few years ago. Yes. You never know. You might get one miracle home run. Like you never know what's going to happen. So I think it's just a good fringy move for David Stearns, who loves good fringy moves.
Yeah, Alex Canario, he a couple, I think like 20, what was the year they popped off? 2022, he had 37 home runs in the minors.
Yeah.
And that was his big like, whoa, oh my goodness. Like he was always a fringy prospect. That happened, put him on the map. And he just never really got the chance. The Cubs have weirdly had a very crowded outfield for like the last 3 years, despite having like almost no all-star players in that outfield, which is kind of funny. But they just have a ton of guys that exist and play that position. So he'd been boxed out. And I like it. I really like that. I think that's a really good like getting in on the margins type move that the Mets are making that doesn't hurt them ever.
He also, I know he's not exactly a good fielder, but last year his most played position for the Cubs in AAA was center field.
Okay, yeah.
So at least there was like, let's see if you could just do this for a little bit.
And in his small samples that he had at the major leagues, and I say small, he's had 42 plate appearances. He wasn't chasing at the major league level. He was striking out, but he wasn't chasing. And when he did hit the baseball, he hit it very hard. So those are all really encouraging things. And
I know this is your new big thing you're into this offseason.
Bat speed.
Yeah, something that you can pick up very quickly is bat speed. And Alexander Canario had some of the best bat speed in the majors when the few at bats he had.
Yeah, I mean,
you can't teach that.
Right now, Jose Azocar's playing well. He could be the Jose Azocar role if they really want him to. Like, no one, you're not going to lose sleep if you DFA Jose Azocar over Canario, who Canario could still have a little bit of ceiling. We know what Azocar is.
It's also so funny to me that when these guys are listed on all the MLB sanctioned sites, referenced in Savant, before they become sanctioned major leaguers, they have their like when they were signed height and weight listings, and Alexander Canario is listed 5'11", 165 pounds.
Do you know what he's on Baseball Reference?
What?
5'11", 212. He's at
Okay,
60 pounds.
50 pounds. That was perfect. I think Ryan Mauricio is listed at like 145 on there, which is funny.
Yeah, no, I think he's 145. I think my favorite one was Oswaldo Cabrera. I think was 125, which is just like, come on, boy, we can't be serious here. But I think that's pretty much all we have to talk about in terms of Mets baseball. Let's go ahead and take a look at the reviews here and read out a couple, because we did tell you guys that we were going to read some out, and I'll read out one of the longer ones too, because I kind of blue balled you guys a little bit on the last one if that was your review. So let's see. Oh, we got one. Jacob username is taken. All right, he says, wow, this is very long. I'll read it. Whatever. Why not? I'm a Rangers fan from Texas, but the perspective that Mets'd brings has made the Mets my second favorite team to watch and root for. It helps that my NFL fandom means lifelong enmity. I don't know what that word is. With the city of Philadelphia and a general distaste for Washington, D.C. sports teams. All right, well, that one hurts. Mark and James strike the perfect balance of being excited fans while also viewing the game through the modern lens of efficiency and analytical evaluation. Nobody else in baseball media pulls it off without being inconsistent or blindly carrying water for the team. Like the title of this review, every fan base wishes they had a pod like this. I'd listen to James talk ball for hours and hours. Draftnik Mark, 85 million YouTube views. Means a ton. Thank you very much. People already do listen to him and talk ball for hours. He has a question for us. This is actually good. We can answer this. What's your favorite market inefficiency in baseball? It can be historical, the value of on-base percentage, present day, such as pitch decay. Yeah, I guess what is your favorite inefficiency? You got one, James?
Yeah, I think it's something that's hard to track. I know that my friends at Pitcher List are doing a really good job right now trying to quantify it, but pitchers command. Pitchers that have command is something it's not easy to track, like year to year, sometimes even start to start. But if a pitcher's on, basically no matter how bad the stuff is, like they'll be able to dice you up like any single way.
Well, it's funny that you said, because I'd been really diving into Command Plus recently, because I've been looking at a lot of Stuff Plus, but I looked at Command Plus, and you can find a lot more production players that are producing quality at the exact time based on Command Plus, where we know Stuff Plus is like future value could be type thing.
Yeah, Stuff Plus is kind of like the pop and like how good someone can be. But I was listening to I think it was a Pitching Ninja podcast clip of Luke Weaver talking about Zach Greinke, and he was talking about Greinke facing Eric Lauer. And I think we all remember watching Eric Lauer and the Padres and Brewers over the years as someone who was incredibly unspectacular to the eye. But Luke Weaver was like, Lauer, he had this great fastball. He was so good at putting it in the righty's hands. And I was like, oh, I guess that, like, again, like that deeper understanding that is a great fastball. You can just put that fastball there every single time. But at the end of the clip, Greinke knew that pitch was coming because he knew everything about everybody. And he stepped like 2 inches back in the box, or like out away from the plate, and he just yanked a fastball over the fence for a home run. And that was the big thing that Luke Weaver's talking about, how much of a savant Greinke was. But I do think that pitchers with command, pitchers that can just spot the ball, that's probably one of the greatest inefficiencies we have. One of the reasons is it's hard to know if they're going to be able to spot it every single time.
Correct. Yeah. That's the big thing. When you throw 99, you throw 99 every time. When you have command, you can still miss a spot and give up a tank.
And if you throw 99, you miss your spot, good chance they're still missing it too. Like that's one of my favorite fallacies. People are like, it doesn't matter if you throw 100, major league hitters can still hit it. Not always. If you throw 100,
their offensive numbers are way worse against 100 miles per hour than they are against 97 miles an hour. It's a fact.
All right. We got one more here from T Hearns 718. You guys provide the best data analysis. Great job breaking down Clay Holmes. So yeah, nice. So we're gonna. This is kind of the fun of spring training, the joy of creators like us, where there's so many little tiny things that happen that actually could wind up being valuable. A lot of things that won't be valuable, but little tiny things. We're going to get the microscope out. We're going to have a really good time this next month and get you guys ready for the season with us.
Yeah, so make sure you are subscribed to the Mets'd podcast channel over on YouTube if you want to see the video version of this. If you're listening to us, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, drop us a rating, drop us a review, download, and subscribe. You can follow James on Twitter at
James_Sciano. And one more thing, guys. We're going to talk a little bit more, maybe in the coming weeks, maybe do a big social media post about possibly searching for an intern or two as the season gets rolling. So before we do that, if any of you guys are listening, big time fans here, listeners that are consistent, hit us up first. Tell us things if you guys have done, if you guys have ever made TikToks consistently, if you guys are active on Twitter. We have our eyes on a few people in the community right now. We know we've been watching a couple of you guys, but if anybody wants to jump before we pose this to the public and you're still listening at the end of the episode, you're definitely someone that we want. Hit us up.
You think you have value to us, it could be something that we're not even thinking of. Just come and tell us what you think your value could be for us.
We're very open-minded right now. We're just ready. We would like to add to the team before the season starts.
Definitely. So make sure you hit us up. I have my DMs open as well, so I won't be Hollywood this time when it comes to intern search there. We appreciate you guys. James, where can they follow you on Twitter in case they want to DM you?
Follow me at James_Shiano. Much more likely to get a response from me than Mark.
Definitely, but I might respond at Draft Mark with the C. Guys, thank you so much for listening and watching this episode. We will catch you all on the next one. Peace out.
Peace out, guys. Let's go Mets.